The night she asked me to pretend to be her boyfriend, rain was pouring so hard it felt like the city itself was trying to wash away regret. I remember the way the streetlights blurred, the way my hands were shaking for reasons I didn't yet understand, and the weight of that single request settling into my chest like it would change everything. I had no idea that a simple favor, meant to last only a while, would become the most important chapter of my life. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness waves, second chances, and stories that remind us how fragile and beautiful the human heart can be, take a moment right now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who might need hope today, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that stay with you long after they end. My name is Daniel Harris, and at the time, I was 32, living in a quiet corner of Ohio where life felt stuck on repeat. I worked as an assistant manager at a hardware store, rented a small apartment that always smelled faintly of coffee and dust, and spent most evenings alone with my thoughts. I had been in love once, deeply, recklessly, and when that relationship ended, it left behind a silence that felt permanent. I told myself I was fine, that loneliness was just part of being an adult, but some nights the quiet screamed louder than any argument ever had. Emily Carter worked at the bakery across the street from my apartment. She was 29, soft-spoken, with tired eyes that suggested she carried more weight than she let on. I noticed her long before she noticed me, the way she always wore light sweaters even in summer, the way she smiled politely at customers but rarely laughed. We exchanged nods and brief greetings for months, nothing more. Two strangers sharing the same stretch of sidewalk, never guessing how closely our lives would soon intertwine. Everything changed on the evening of her sister's engagement party. I didn't know that at the time. All I knew was that Emily was standing outside the bakery after closing, soaked from the rain, mascara faintly smudged, her hands clasped so tightly they looked numb. When she looked up and saw me, something in her expression broke. She didn't cry, not then. She just asked if we could talk, and before I could overthink it, I said yes. We walked under the awning, the rain hammering the pavement, and that's when she told me everything in a rush of breath and emotion. Her family had always been loud, loving, and relentless. Her younger sister was getting married, her cousins were settling down, and Emily, still single after a painful breakup years earlier, had become the unspoken disappointment. The questions never stopped. The pity smiles, the awkward silences. And that night, she couldn't face them alone anymore. She asked me to pretend to be her boyfriend for a while. Just long enough to get through family events. Just long enough to breathe. She promised it wouldn't be complicated. She promised she wouldn't ask for anything unreasonable. And somewhere in my panic, a ridiculous thought crossed my mind about lines that shouldn't be crossed, about pretending not turning into something else. I didn't say it out loud. I just nodded, because something in her eyes looked like hope clinging to the edge of despair. The first time I met her family, I felt like an actor who hadn't read the script. Her parents were warm but watchful, her sister radiant with wedding excitement, her relatives curious in a way that felt invasive. I played my role carefully, attentive without being possessive, kind without being overly familiar. Emily stayed close, her arm brushing mine, her presence grounding me. And to my surprise, the pretending didn't feel fake. It felt calm. Safe. Like slipping into a life that almost fit. Weeks turned into months. Dinners, birthdays, Sunday afternoons that stretched into evening. We learned each other's habits in ways that had nothing to do with romance. I learned she hated thunderstorms but loved old black and white movies. She learned I took my coffee too seriously and still wrote letters I never sent. We supported each other through small crises and quiet victories. The lie we were living became less about deception and more about shelter, a shared space where neither of us had to be alone. But pretending has a cost. The longer we played our parts, the harder it became to separate what was real from what was borrowed. I caught myself worrying about her late nights, feeling jealous of strangers who made her laugh. I noticed the way she relaxed around me, how her guarded expression softened when she thought no one was watching. And I realized, slowly and painfully, that I was falling in love with her in the most inconvenient way possible. Emily was changing too. The anxiety that once shadowed her steps began to lift. She laughed more freely, spoke with confidence, stopped apologizing for existing. Her family noticed. They praised me for being good for her, for grounding her. Each compliment felt like a knife, because I didn't know how to tell them that our foundation was built on a lie we never meant to live inside for so long. The breaking point came at her sister's wedding. The venue was a restored barn, all soft lights and white flowers. Emily looked beautiful in a simple blue dress, nervous and radiant all at once. I stood beside her, playing my role, my heart pounding. As the ceremony unfolded, I watched her wipe away tears, watched her smile at love so openly, and I knew I couldn't keep pretending forever. Loving her without being honest felt like betrayal. After the reception, we stepped outside into the cool night air. The music faded behind us, replaced by crickets and distant laughter. Emily looked at me then, really looked, and something shifted. She thanked me for everything, for being there, for helping her through a difficult chapter. And in her gratitude, I heard an unspoken goodbye. The realization hit me harder than any rejection ever had. I didn't confess my love that night. Fear won. I told myself it wasn't fair, that she hadn't signed up for real feelings. We returned to the party, finished our roles, and when it was over, the pretending quietly ended. No dramatic farewell. Just a mutual understanding that the favor had run its course. The weeks after were some of the loneliest of my life. Emily and I drifted apart, polite but distant. She focused on herself, on rebuilding her life without borrowed confidence. I tried to do the same, but the absence she left behind echoed through every part of my routine. I missed her presence, her quiet strength, the way she made the world feel less heavy just by being near. Months passed. Winter gave way to spring. One afternoon, I ran into Emily at the park. She looked different, lighter somehow. We talked like old friends, catching up on surface details. Then she told me she was moving to another state for a new job, a fresh start she felt ready for. I congratulated her, smiling through the ache. As we said goodbye, she hesitated, as if weighing words she never spoke. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by memories that weren't mine to keep anymore. And for the first time in a long while, I cried. Not just for her, but for myself, for all the chances I had let pass out of fear. I realized then that pretending had taught me something real. It had shown me the kind of love I was capable of, the kind of man I wanted to be. And maybe that lesson was enough. Or so I thought. A week before Emily was set to leave, she showed up at my door. No rain this time. Just quiet determination. She told me she had spent months rebuilding herself, learning to stand alone, understanding that the confidence she found wasn't something I gave her, but something I helped her uncover. She said pretending had given her space to heal, but it had also shown her what genuine connection felt like. She admitted she had been afraid too. Afraid to risk something real, afraid to lose the safety we created together. But as she prepared to leave, she realized she didn't want to run from feelings anymore. She wanted to face them, even if it meant uncertainty. We didn't rush into anything. There were no dramatic gestures, no perfect endings wrapped in certainty. Just honesty, finally. We decided to try, knowing it wouldn't be easy, knowing love rarely is. And for the first time, the future didn't feel like something to fear. Before this story ends, take a moment to comment below with a single word that describes how this journey made you feel. Your words matter more than you know. Emily stayed. Or maybe we both did. We built something slow and real, rooted in truth rather than pretense. Some days were hard. Old insecurities resurfaced. Trust had to be earned, not assumed. But we faced it together, no longer hiding behind roles or expectations. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of a love